Modern Warfare, developed by Infinity Ward and released in 2019, is considered the most realistic Call of Duty game of all time. From the graphics and animations to the downright brutally accurate depictions of war, Modern Warfare goes all out, and it shows. After the dumpster fire that was Black Ops 4, fans desperately needed a more grounded Call of Duty, something to bring them back to the old days. That was what 2019 was. The hype that the trailer for Modern Warfare 2019 got was absolutely insane. In fact, it made it the best-selling game of 2020. In this video, I want to dive into most of the weapons in 2019 and see how accurate they really are today. To do that, I'll be analyzing each weapon, seeing if they're in use by any military or police forces, and determining if the guns themselves are accurately modeled to their real versions. After doing so, each weapon is going to gain a spot on this tier list. Unfortunately, due to the sheer amount of guns in the game, amounting to 45 total, I'll be only going over the base game weapons and not the DLC weapons. Most of the DLC guns were added for creative purposes anyway, and some definitely don't fit the theme of the game, so I think going over only the base ones is more fair. Hey there, before we get into the video, I just want to give credit to KThugsonTV for this video idea. I got a lot of inspiration from his video. His video will be linked in the description. Please go watch it after this one. Thank you. The first pistol in this game is the X16. The X16 is based on the Glock 21 Gen 3. It has a nice tan finish with a seemingly aftermarket slide by the fictional weapons manufacturer XRK. Overall, the model is very realistic to the Glock it's based on, and while the Glock 21 is overshadowed by the Glock 17 and 19, it is still used by some police units and special forces units. The X16 gets an S tier. Shockingly, the 1911 is based on the Colt M1911 in Modern Warfare, although it is slightly modernized. However, it's still relatively faithful, and there's not too much to be said about it in terms of model accuracy. In terms of its use in the military and police, it's a bit different. In the military, the M1911 has been almost completely replaced, first by the M45A1, a heavily modernized version of the M1911, and then the M18. However, some smaller foreign militaries and some police forces still utilize it. Since the version of the weapon in the game is not very widely used, I can't really give it an S. Instead, the M1911 only gets an A tier in my book. The 357 Magnum appears to be based on the Smith & Wesson Model 686, however there are differing opinions on this across the internet. It seems to be a mishmash of multiple different revolvers, and it's mostly its own thing. In terms of military and police use, it's next to nothing. While some officers may choose to carry a 357, they're not standard issue and are very rare. For the military, if they're ever even used, it would only be for pilot survival kits or something along those lines. Overall, the weapon's basically unused by any modern military or police forces. Unfortunately, the 357 Magnum takes the first F tier. The M19 is a fictional variation of the Sig Sauer M17, also known as the P320. It is nearly identical to the M17, except it fires 45 ACP instead of 9mm. In 2017, the United States Armed Forces adopted the M17 as a replacement to the Beretta M9. Police in many countries also have wide use of this pistol. While its use is highly accurate, since it is technically fictional, I can't give it any higher than a B tier. The 50GS. Of course, we cannot forget about the Desert Eagle, developed by Magnum Research. Unfortunately, however, the in-game 50GS is absolutely butchered. The devs definitely used their creative freedom in designing this gun, but thankfully it's still pretty sexy. However, those iron sights, dear God. Obviously, the Desert Eagle is not used by any military or police forces due to the fact that it is massive and completely unnecessary, so the 50GS gets a D for desert or something. Since the launchers are not particularly interesting, we're just going to quickly speed past them. The Pila is based off the Russian 9K333 Verba, known by NATO as the SA-25 and is currently in use by the Russian military, S tier. The Strela P is based off the Swedish Carl Gustaf M4 and is currently in use by primarily the Swedes, S tier. The Joker is based off the FGM-148 Javelin and is most definitely still in use by the US military as well as many other military forces around the world, S tier. The RPG-7 is an RPG-7. I don't think an explanation is required here, so S tier. The only interesting launcher on this list is the MGL-32, or the War Machine as some people know. It is based off the Milcor Mark 14 and it is still in wide use by military and police forces alike, S tier. Starting off the shotguns comes the Model 680. The Model 680 is based off the very famous Remington 870. The Remington 870 is very well modeled in Modern Warfare, and in my personal opinion is one of the cleanest looking shotguns ever. The gun is also widely used around the world, being standard issue for most US police forces. The US military also uses it for CQB, making it accurately placed in this game, S tier. The R90 is based off the standard manufacturing DP-12. The DP-12 is a very unique weapon, having 2 magazine tubes similar to the Kel-Tec KSG, which appeared back in Black Ops 2. The gun is accurately modeled in-game, however, the gun isn't used by any military or police due to it being basically a really expensive gimmick. I mean, at least it's cool though, right? Either way, B tier. The 725. Oh god, the 725. This thing gives me bad memories. Anyway, it's modeled after the Browning Satori 725, and it's kind of hard to mess up the model of this gun as it is a pretty simple wooden double barrel. However, it is not in use by any military or police forces due to it being a sporting or hunting rifle. I'm tempted to give this thing an F tier for the horrible memories it brings back, however I'm going to keep the integrity of this list and just give it a B. The very unique Origin 12, based off the very unique Fostech Origin 12, is the final shotgun on this list. The model of the gun is very accurate down to even the iron sights for once, and the only oddity is the pre-attached side-mounted foregrip, but that's not really a problem. The Origin 12, however, is also not in use by any military or police. Man, this game really just includes a bunch of random-ass civilian shotguns. Anyway, B tier. The Marksman rifle category is quite small, at least in the base game for Modern Warfare, and starting it off is the EBR-14. While you may think the EBR-14 is modeled around an EBR-14, this is not true actually. It's actually just an M14. A modernized version, but an M14 nonetheless. However, you can put on attachments that turns it into an EBR-14, so no biggie. The use of the M14 in modern-day combat or police forces is slim to none. Its improvement to EBR is far more common, as the M14 is outdated and less versatile. Since the gun is incorrectly modeled for its name in-game and it's also not really used without the given attachments, I'm going to have to give it a C tier. Oh boy, the Mark II carbine is up next, and it is based off the Marlin Model 1895. That's right, a gun made in 1895. The gun is actually very accurate with this model, but it's obviously not used by anybody around the world, at least not for any actual purpose other than sporting. It's safe to say the gun's just obsolete. D tier. The classic Kar 98K falls under the exact same umbrella as the Mark II. It is modeled accurately off its real counterpart, the Carabiner 98K, and it even has a really nice animation for the stripper clip. However, it is unused by modern military or police. Although this was my favorite sniper of any COD, probably. Unfortunately, it goes in D tier. The snipers, some people's bread and butter of COD, are started off by possibly the worst sniper in every single COD game, the Dragunov. Modeled after the SVD Dragunov, the gun isn't that bad, visually at least. Gameplay-wise, this may be not only the worst gun in this game, but like I said, every single COD game, ever. Anyway, despite the rifle's age, it is still used to this day, in fact not only by the Russian armed forces, but by many former Soviet states. It is rarely used by police, but its military use makes it a good fit in Modern Warfare. Unfortunately, S tier. The HDR is the only fictional weapon in this entire game. According to the game, it's a custom-made rifle by one of the campaign characters, Hadir Karim, and it appears to be a mix of multiple different snipers, the Victrix Corvus, the PGM Mini Hecate, and the Armalite AR-50A1. Although I do think this gun is really cool, unfortunately it's completely fictional, so F tier. The AX-50 is both accurately named and modeled after the Accuracy International AX-50. There are small differences, like the magazine and the handguard proportions, but overall the gun is fairly accurate. Surprisingly, this gun actually is in service. While its use is limited, it is used by the UK, Turkey, Denmark, and a couple other countries. I actually really like this gun, and aesthetically it sort of reminds me of the DSR from BO2. S tier. The first LMG on this list is the PKM. The PKM, designed after the obvious PKM, is accurately modeled, even with attachments being able to make it a PKP Pechenik. The use of this LMG is also very widespread, with this gun being one of the most widely used machine guns on the earth right now, being used by Russia, China, India, Vietnam, Cuba, many countries across the Middle East, Africa, and South America. This gun absolutely has its place in Modern Warfare, making it an S tier. The SA-87 is modeled and designed around the L-86A1. While the gun is mostly accurate to the L-86, it also has some features mashed in from the rifle version, the L-85. For example, the long handguard and the lack of vertical grip. The L86A2 is in service by some countries like the UK, Ukraine, and some other countries. However, the gun's modeled after its predecessor, the A1, making it not totally accurate. Also, it doesn't break apart every time you hit it on something, so overall the gun gets an A. The next LMG is the M91. This gun is supposed to be a Heckler & Koch MG5, and while its model is fine, for some reason it has this weird two-tone thing going again, not sure why. Anyway, the machine gun is currently used by multiple countries, including but not limited to Germany, Ukraine, and Spain. Overall, the gun gets an S tier. Finally, the last LMG is the MG34. This gun's model is accurate apart from the fact that the shells eject from the side and not the bottom, and honestly, I have no idea what this gun is doing in this game. It's a heavily dated LMG from World War II. I mean, yeah, it's cool, but nobody uses it other than apparently Greece. Apparently, Greece still has some in their armory as of 2023. Not sure why or if it's actually true, but I have multiple sources saying it is, so I guess this gun gets a C tier? I don't know, man. Starting the SMG category comes the AUG. It is based off the Steyr AUG A3 9mm XS. It is mostly accurate to its model, with the biggest difference being the foregrip. They decided to go with what looks like a folding foregrip as opposed to the real-life rail-mounted one. While the weapon is not commonly used by military aside from special forces use, it has found a niche role in police use, especially in European countries. The game features an attachment to convert the gun into 5.56, turning it into an AUG A3, which is widely used by militaries. This puts the gun in an S tier. The P90 is based off the very popular FN P90, and the in-game model is actually very accurate. The P90 is very popular amongst both Belgian and French military as well as police, making its use very accurate. It has some use amongst US special forces and police, but it's not really common. Anyway, Infinity Ward did a very good job on the P90. S tier. The good old MP5. Specifically, this one's based off the Heckler & Koch MP5A3. The model in game is faithful, however, for some reason the handguard is default fitted with an unusable built-in flashlight. Other than that, the model is pretty well done, establishing the MP5 in a game for the billionth time. Honestly, I don't even need to get into military and police use. You guys already know. The MP5 has overwhelming use across the world in both aspects, so S tier. The Uzi features in Modern Warfare 2019, of course being based off the IMI Uzi. The model is pretty accurate with some small differences like the insanely large iron sights. While the Uzi has very little to no military use in modern day, some police forces like the Israel police and some South American police forces still use it, although it's not so common these days. The Uzi gets a respectable A tier. PP-19 Bison is a PP-19 Bison. The model is pretty faithful to the original. For some reason though, it comes with a Picatinny mount pre-attached even when no sights are used. Russian SOF and police forces still widely use the Bison, although the PP-1901 Vitsaz has begun to replace the PP-19 in many areas. Another S tier for 2019. Last but not least, the beautiful MP7, although not in this game. While the gun is supposed to be based on the Heckler & Koch MP7A2, it's not fully accurate. The iron sights are strange to say the least, and the receiver is just wrong. The charging handle is incorrect and it has a strange side folding stock. In terms of military and police use, the MP7 is still widely used by both, especially the Germans, as it makes for an amazing CQB weapon. However, due to the absolute butchering of the model, the gun goes in B tier. Moving on to the assault rifles, the Kilo 141, often mistaken to be an ACR, is actually Heckler & Koch HK433. The gun is modeled accurately, looking quite like the real thing, and while this gun has been used in the Russian-Ukraine war, it doesn't make too much sense being in Modern Warfare. The gun at the time of the game's release was in prototype stages, however, since it has been used now, I guess they predict the future. A tier for the Kilo. The FAL is modeled after the FN FAL, being fitted with the same barrel length as the paratrooper variant. The FAL is accurately modeled, but gameplay-wise it can only go semi-auto and 3-round bursts with an attachment. The FAL is widely used across the world by over 90 countries, both military and police. This, like the PKM, fits very well in Modern Warfare, so it gets an S tier. The classic M4A1. Like most games, this gun is in fact not an M4A1, but instead a Colt Model 933. By default, this gun is heavily customized with a Daniel Defense Riz 2 handguard and SOTMOD Block 2 stock. The gun, while not being an M4A1, is modeled accurately to the 933. In terms of use, I don't really think an explanation is required. AR pattern rifles are one of the most common rifles across the world, in use by many countries by military and police. S tier. The next assault rifle, referred to as the FR556, is meant to be the FAMAS F1. While most of the gun is alright, there is one part of it that's quite bizarre. The weapon appears to have a Remington ACR gas block and barrel, despite the gun not even being gas operated. From a real-world use perspective, the FAMAS F1 has some limited use as compared to the FAMAS G2. It is used by a couple South American countries, as well as some limited use in Europe and the Middle East. Overall, it's quite a weird gun in Modern Warfare, and that's why it earned itself a C tier. Oh look, it's the Tarkov gun. The Ash 12, or now known as the Shak 12, being called the Odin in this game. While the gun itself was not badly modeled, I don't really see why it's in the game at all. It's such an odd and niche choice to put in the game, and while it is cool, it doesn't really fit. The gun is indeed used by the Russian Spetsnaz, but it's not very common, and the only two games I've ever even seen it in are this one and Tarkov. Cool gun, but doesn't really fit. B tier. The M13, also known as my personal favorite AR in the game, is modeled after the Sig Sauer MCX Virtus SBR. There are small intentional design changes like the fictional stock and the mag release button fence, but the rest of the model is mostly accurate. The MCX is in use by many Special Forces units around the world, like the US SOCOM and the Netherlands Maritime Special Forces. It is also used by police, like the Australian NSW Police Force Tactical Operations Unit. This gun is great, I love it, and it's an S tier. The FN Scar 17 makes a debut in this game, being the real-life FN Scar H. Not sure why they didn't just call it an FN Mark 17 or an FN Scar H, but instead chose to combine the names when they had the rights to the name and the gun from FN, but whatever they want to do, I guess. The gun's model does have a few inaccuracies, for example the vent holes being turned into one big vent hole and the side rails being elongated, as well as the stock being crippled into a non-adjustable stock. I'm not really sure why they made these changes, when again, they had the rights to the gun. It's very strange. Anyway, the weapon's use is very accurate, with the gun being used across the world as well as in the United States. S tier. Finally, the big and the bold, the AK-47. Surprisingly, the AK-47 is actually an AK-47, featuring a milled dust cover instead of a snapped one. The craziest part about this gun is just the amount of variations that you can make with it. You can turn it into a 74, AKM, 74U, AKMSU, and even a couple others. It's honestly really impressive. In terms of military use, I don't even need to explain this one. Same as its counterpart, the M4. This gun gets an S. And there it is. That's every base weapon in Modern Warfare 2019. For a Call of Duty game, I have to say this is both very impressive in terms of accuracy as well as just the sheer amount of weapons. I literally had to cut out all the DLC weapons because this video would have just been too long and too complicated. 99% of the guns make sense to be in this game, with only one being fictional and still using real weapon parts, and a few being kind of unreasonable or just bad additions. Modern Warfare not only holds up in the year 2019, but in 2025 as well, as the most realistic COD game ever produced.